Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today for a Learning and Growing webinar on strange and unusual research, how to get students writing through their interest. Our presenter today is Katie Beth Brooks of College of Coastal Georgia. My name is Sidra, and I'll be your moderator today for Hawks Learning. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation, so please enter any questions you have into the Q&A module as we go, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. I'll now hand it over to our presenter.
Thank you so much. So thank you all for joining me today. I'm really excited to be talking about what I do in the first year semester 2 classroom, which I have themed and structured to prioritize research and the research process specifically. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. And there we go. Okay. So, again, I'm Dr. Katie Beth Brooks. I'm Assistant Professor of English at the College of Coastal Georgia. If you have any questions, you can email me at that link or at the email, or find me on Instagram and Twitter at that handle at KT_BethB. So I do have a Google folder with the slideshow and PDFs of all the assignments I'm going to be talking about. If you want to follow that QR code, if you want access to anything else, feel free just to ask me. But the first thing we're going to talk about is going to be the institutional context, followed by the specific classroom context. And then I'm going to walk through the two focuses or two projects that I focus on in the first year writing classroom. So, like I said, I am from the College of Coastal Georgia. The College of Coastal Georgia is an open access institution with about 3,400-ish students, located in Brunswick, Georgia. We are very near St. Simons and Jekyll Island and Sea Island, if you've heard of those places, about an hour south of Savannah and an hour north of Jacksonville. And I've been at this college since 2021. I typically teach English courses. Our only bachelor's degree of arts is American Studies, so I also teach in that program. But my main job for the most part is teaching English first year writing 1 and first year writing 2. As for the classroom context, at my school, we have a 24-seat cap, which is a lot, especially when WPA guidelines suggest 19. And this is the cap for an in-person or an online course. And this class, this structure and this theme is what I use for both in-person and online versions of this class. So typically the day-to-day, I set up my class as a writing workshop. Like I said before, we really focus on the composition or the research process. So most class periods typically look like me giving some pointers, going over how to write intros, how to write paragraphs, and then giving them the majority of the class to work on that writing and to also get feedback from me and feedback from their peers. Luckily, I've been able to focus this course how I want to focus it, meaning I focus it on academic writing, research methods, and methodologies. And we use student research as the text and content of the course. So I have prior students' work on display on our D2L site, on our learning management site, and we break down and look at everyone else's projects. And I also have mentor texts that I provide for them as well. Now, the goal of this class is to give the students a space to practice different research strategies and to ultimately help them think of research as play or exploration. With the idea of play in mind, I've themed my course Strange and Unusual. You'll see here a GIF of Lydia Dietz from Beetlejuice saying, I myself am strange and unusual, and this quote is actually at the top of my syllabus. What I mean by strange and unusual is anything that might be weird, odd, or just really specific to student interest. And with the freedom I have in my course, I can encourage students to use our research project as a means to explore a topic they're already interested in while still guiding them through the many different parts of research and supporting their growth as writers. So the goal of an outcome for this course theme, student engagement and agency, which I hope I'll be able to display at the end with some student feedback and just some numbers about the course. Student buy-in, maintaining interest while working on transferable skills. And then what I think of as kind of the most selfish goal or outcome of this, but lessening the onslaught of those topics that students always write about. So topics like gun control, legalizing marijuana, abortion rights, those kinds of papers that I know many folks on my campus have kind of put a moratorium on those in their syllabus that students can't write about those topics. So if to try to lessen those topics while also encouraging students to write, we focus on weird topics that they might be interested in. So in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you, if you were in my class, what strange topic you would be interested in writing about, but we'll go ahead and talk about the very first assignment. So coming into the class, they're second semester freshmen. They may be a little older. We have a really large non-traditional population. So I have students aging from dual enrollment all the way up to 60 some semesters or older. So I like to make my students feel like they already have, or I like to acknowledge that my students have some type of knowledge already. So this assignment is a field guide. We know a field guide is basically just a report on a subject matter for a lay audience. When we start this project, the kind of refrain that I'm always saying is dumb it down for Dr. Brooks. So this assignment is meant to have students work through knowledges that they already have on a strange or unusual subject. Recently, this past fall, my students have started calling this their hyperfixation project, which I think is a lot of fun. So this allows them to see what knowledge they already have while seeing what holes they may have in the subject. And this field guide also served as a primer on a subject for me. So if I know what the subject is, then I'm going to be better prepared to give them personalized feedback on the way. Give them personalized feedback on the way through the project. So students are asked to include whatever the reader needs to know to follow the topic and understand where the research question comes from. So some examples that I've had from students have written about conspiracy theories. I had a really great paper that was on 3 specific TikTok conspiracy theories that kept coming across their For You page. And the student looked at the numbers, looked at different however many times the video had been reposted to talk about the conspiracy theory. Students obviously love writing about serial killers. Not obviously, but mine do, I guess. We have criminology major at our school, so they really like discussing these things. Jellyfish, eels, octopuses, which I've learned from a student is the correct way to multiply octopus. Skincare, different protective hairstyles, pregnancy, zombies, had a really great paper on Taylor Swift. A lot of really interesting and just varied topics from these students. Oftentimes I do have students who have a hard time picking something out, whether they don't think that they have any interests, or it's kind of like when you ask someone what their favorite song is and they say that they're not really into music. But if that's the case, then I encourage them to look to their future major and choose a topic that maybe they've heard about that they don't really know too much about. So if you were in my class, what do you think your strange and unusual topic would be? What would be your hyperfixation topic? If you can put it in the chat, that would be great. I'll give you a few seconds. Well, my example, because I am a scholar of Appalachian studies and writing pedagogy, is a field guide to Appalachian spooky tales. This is the example that I give to my students when they start working on their field guides. And I have found that they really enjoy just seeing what type a thing I would be writing about. So I use different examples. So this is the main one that I use, but I also just taught a global issues course on Taylor Swift. So I meant to do a Taylor Swift one too, but this one is close to my heart. So I talk about the field guide is scary stories that I was told by my my aunts and uncles when I was little, whether that scary story is uh, when I was told the scary story, just kind of talking about storytelling in Appalachia. So I think the final part of this project is what I consider to be the most important part of the project. Um, it's a way for students to think about their knowledge that they already have and what questions arise. And the final part of the field guide for the field guide is the research question. So this conclusion page of the guide needs to have the conclusion, but it needs to end with a question. It needs to end with future research because this is going to guide the research for the rest of the semester. To create a research question, we spend a full class period reflecting on what they've learned and if any questions bubbled up. So we also talk about narrowing what's doable in 10 weeks and the 10 weeks we have left in the semester. So my students who write about conspiracy theories, we can't prove a conspiracy theory exists, but we can talk about other things that have to do with conspiracy theories, and we can talk about that a little bit later. And make it very clear, going back to that research as play, right? The research process changes. It's going to change what you're thinking about. It's going to change your ideas of a subject. These questions that they come up with their field guide are ultimately preliminary. So this first question could look very different from the final research question that they pose in their final paper. And every single assignment following the field guide that's leading up to that research paper, I do ask my students to put their research question at the very top. We use MLA formatting, so it would go under in that kind of front matter on the top left-hand side of the page. Underneath their name, I would have them just put what their current research question is, just to see how it changes and develops over time. So, example, this is the conclusion slide for my Scary Stories in Appalachia field guide. And my research question at the bottom is, why do people in central Appalachia in Virginia, particularly Wise County, which is my home county in Virginia, why do they tell stories? So this is a very broad question right now. I ask my students to break down this question and see how doable this question actually is, how easy it would be to research, how to research it. Ultimately, though, after that, my students are then asked to submit a letter, proposal, and research plan to me. So they'll just say, "Dear Dr. Brooks," and go into this information that I ask from them. So the topic or what you want the research or what you want to research, and I tell them this can be very preliminary. I asked for background information and history, maybe things that they didn't mention in their field guide, or I also ask about their connection to the topic, like why is this an important topic for them to think about and to share with others. I ask them to restate their research question or whatever question it is that they hope to answer, get close to answering in their research paper, and their potential mode of primary data collection. So I do ask students to have 6 sources, one of which needs to be some sort of primary resource, some primary research. And I've had students do surveys, interviews, email correspondence, social media observations. The one that they tend to go more towards is close analysis of a text or social media observations. So movies, TV shows. Had a really great paper in the fall about Godzilla and how the Godzilla movies follow whatever's happening in socio-political crises at the time and how it changes because of that, are different cultural issues. And the topic must be approved before beginning source collection. And the day that I assign the proposal and the research plan is typically the day after the class period after the field guide is due. And I ask students to write their research questions on the board as they are in the field guide. After we do that, with all the research questions on the board, we talk about the different ways of conducting primary research. And we talk about the difference between primary and secondary research. We talk about that pretty much the entire semester. And data collection. And once the students know some of the options, they look at their research question, they consider the different opportunities for data collection that they can complete, and then they go back to the board and then they write what primary data collection method that they're going to be using. This has been a really successful assignment, the in-class assignment, because it helps students who maybe are struggling to see what this might look like, see how their classmates are envisioning this project being completed. So once the topic has been approved and we're good to go, I then give them a template for a source collection. And this template is available in that QR code that I showed at the beginning. I'll show it again at the end too, in case you weren't able to grab that QR code. But students are then asked to create a collection of 4+ sources. And I use 4 here because understanding that while 6 is the minimum, they're going to be adding research to it as they keep going, and we talk about that. But I asked them for 4+ secondary sources from Galileo, which is our institutional research database. This template is one that I have used in the past for projects, and I basically just asked them to go ahead and give me that MLA citation so they can go ahead and get it over with. I asked them for this source collection to be in alphabetical order too, so they can just take the source or the citation and plop it into that works cited when we're working on that final paper. I asked them to provide some information on the authors, just doing some research where the authors are from, who are they, why are they reputable, talking about their ethos a little bit. And then I have them provide a summary of the source. So the summary, I asked for 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph is just a summary of what's going on in the article, what information they found, what the argument is. And what I find to be the most interesting part is paragraph 2, which is 2 to 3 sentences on why this is important for the student's research. Here, I really get to see how their brain is working, get a little bit of a research narrative from them about how they see this working inside of their research. After that, I ask for at least 1 key quote from the source, and I tell them to make sure to include page numbers, because we all know there's nothing worse than having a quote in your paper and not being able to find the page number or where you found that quote before. So we try to keep track of all of that. Keywords or new to you words, and then any other notes they may have. Maybe another question popped up, maybe this revised their research question. It's kind of this template, this source collection is kind of them taking stock of what they found and how it's affected their research process so far. After that, we have a pretty standard outline and rough draft. So the outline is one assignment, then the rough draft. I didn't mention this before. All of these mini assignments, the proposal, the source collection, outline, rough draft, they are all considered major assignments in the course that lead up to that final research paper, just to show that each part of the research process is important to the process. So in this class period, I ask students to help me create an outline. And what I do here is I just pull up a blank Google Doc and we organize an outline together. So you'll see here the structure of the just front matter information, your name, Dr. Brooks, professor's name, class, and then I try to tell them to put the due date there instead of whatever date that they're working on it. I have students who submit a paper on April 20th that will say like March 1st, and just to keep them aware of that. And then again, the research question. And then I ask my students to help me create this. So I say, what comes first? What comes next? What should go there? What does that look like? And they go through, and this is a standard template that my classes have created in the past. You do have a PDF version of this, again, in that folder if you want to grab it, along with some examples from that semester of research statements or questions, followed by thesis statements, just to give some examples of those. When I ask the students to turn in their Outline. I'm typically asking for the standard outline with an introduction paragraph, make sure their research question is there, adding their potential thesis or argument, which is their working thesis. It's going to change more than likely. And then the structure for the paper with the topic sentences. And then finally, the last two projects. That conference length research paper, which I only asked for 6 to 8 pages with 5 secondary sources and 1 primary source. They can use images if they want. They're going to use MLA format. But the project at the end of the semester that I am most excited for every semester is the multimodal presentation. So what the students have to do here, I usually have them turn in their paper, about 3 or 4 weeks before the end of the semester. And then the rest of the semester is spent on this kind of remixed multimodal presentation. So they take their paper, they take the information that they've learned, and then I ask them to present it in a different format for a specific audience that they have choice in. So students, for example, I've had students write about bugs before. I don't remember the exact research question or thesis statement, but their multimodal project turned into a how-to guide for creating a bug collection for middle schoolers that even included a part on how to ethically kill bugs for your bug collection. It was very interesting, but the student came up, presented it. I've had other students create children's books about their topics to share with elementary school age students. Some students are using videos, creating videos like public service announcements, art, poetry. They really, really get into it. And of course, a lot of students just use slideshows. They use PowerPoint and they say, oh, I'm presenting to college students because that's actually what they're doing. Or they'll create slideshows or presentations as if they were going in front of some governmental agency or a board. But the idea here is that they're taking their information that they have written academically in that research paper and then plugging it into a multimodal presentation for another audience. So transferring that knowledge and being able to share that information with a lay audience. Again, dumb it down for Dr. Brooks. That is the number one common refrain throughout the class. So, student feedback. This class has been really successful for a lot of different reasons. But in the past 2 years since I've started using this theme and structure, I've had multiple sections of this course where every student submitted the first project, the field guide. Every single student submitted. And then over 90% of students submitted the final. And that is a little wild for our institutional context because, again, we are an open access school. And we have the problem that I know even non-open access schools are having right now, which is students attending class, showing up, doing the work. We're hitting those COVID students right now who did most of their high school online. And this theme and the way that the class is structured, students come to class, they ask questions, they submit their work. It's really, really heartening to see their ability to engage with this. I think the reason might be that third quote. It made the class feel less like a chore and more like a fun hobby. We all know that our students think of first year writing as just those check marks that they need to get onto their major courses. So why not make this class something that they can enjoy while also learning those transferable skills that they're going to need in their major? This past semester, I did have another student who presented her research on the course. She was the one she studied eels. She's an environmental science major. We have a pretty strong environmental science program being on the coast, being so close to the ocean. But she presented this to professors and other folks on campus at our kind of teaching and learning on campus conference that we have. And other students have come up to me and let me know, or written me and let me know that the skills that they learned, that they used to learn about conspiracy theories or serial killers help them in their upper level classes too. So that being said, I am going to go ahead and turn over to any questions. Again, this QR code will take you to a Google folder that has PDFs and it has the slideshow. So the PDFs will be of both projects, the template for the source collection, and the outline with the example thesis statements. Okay. Give you a few seconds to do this, and then I'm going to hit stop share. But any questions?
We do have one question.
Okay.
How do you mitigate topics that might be too off the wall?
That is a great question. So, there's always that one student who wants to write about something that there's no way that they can research it, no way that they can prove it. So the example that I like to give when people ask me this is I had a student write or want to write about. Do you all remember a few years ago when TikTok, one of the TikTok conspiracy theories was that Helen Keller was not a real person? This student wanted to write about that. And when the proposal phase came up for the project, I let her write about Helen Keller. Her field guide was on the actual person, Helen Keller. And then her research question ended up being, was this person real? But we sat down and had a conference when I got her proposal, and we talked about how that project just was not doable, right? Because as far as we know, as the history shows, Helen Keller exists, right? She existed. She was a person who lived in the world. So we talked about different ways to kind of what other things this student was interested in or trying to get at with this subject. So we wound up talking about, I think her research project transitioned a little bit to more about like or why conspiracy theories are so popular on social media. I've had quite a few of those projects that are social media inspired or perpetuating conspiracy theories. So all that to say, I sit down with each student and we talk about the feasibility of the project. We talk about the ethics of the project too, and how saying this person may not have existed is, we talk about sexism and ableism and all of those things too. So I just try to get them to have a really well-rounded idea of their topic as they set forth with their research question.
Thank you. And then we have one other question. How do you engage students who might not have a topic?
Yeah, and I usually have about one or two of those students. And the first couple of weeks, I expect them to have a topic, usually by the second or third week of class. And if they don't have a topic, I sit down with them and we talk about their major. We talk about what they did when they were younger. We talk about the sports that they played, the musicals that they were in high school, or whatever it may be. But I sit down and I really try to get to know the student. A lot of the time, that turns into students writing something about their future major. So we have a really strong teacher education program here at CCGA. And the student that I'm thinking of who just did not have a strange and unusual topic, she wound up writing about active learning in the kindergarten classroom. And what she did was she wrote a field guide on the history of active learning. And then her field guide or her research paper was, okay, how does this actually look? What does this look like in the classroom? And she interviewed some education majors and some education professors and got some ideas from them. So it's really about, and I'm lucky, I know I mentioned before, I'm 24, I feel like is a lot for a writing class, but it is really a small class. So getting to know your students and being able to help them in that way, I think that helps mitigate that issue of the students who are like, oh, I just don't know what to write about. One student, she was struggling, and I kind of validated her knowledge of Taylor Swift, and she was having a hard time figuring out what topic to do. And we had already talked about, this was last spring, so we were talking about the Eras tour. So her field guide was on. She asked if she could do a field guide on Taylor Swift's albums, and I said yes. And she was shocked that I said yes. And then her research paper, her research question turned into why was there such a scandal, or not scandal, but why were there so many issues with Ticketmaster? Like, and she did a really good, like, strong deep dive on the history of Ticketmaster and the issues that artists find with it and the public finds with it. So it's, again, just really getting to know your students.
Well, thank you so much. That looks like all the time we have for questions. Thank you, Katie, and thank you all for attending today. We will be emailing you a link to view the recording of this webinar once it's available. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please submit your proposals to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm going to go ahead and link in the chat now for easy access. These free webinars are brought to you by Hawks Learning, an innovative educational courseware company. To learn more about our mastery-based course materials and how Hawks can enhance learning outcomes for you and your students, please visit hawkslearning.com, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.